Okay, well, welcome everybody and hello. My name is Jared Rhodes. I'm the Speech and Debate Director for the Calvin Coolidge Presidential Foundation, and we are here at Thales Academy, Rollsville in North Carolina, where we're putting on a debate tournament for middle schoolers and high school students today. I have with me Duke Professor of Political Science and author of the new book, The Sharing Economy, The Pitfalls and Promises, Mike Munger, right here to the left. I also have Addie and Jaden, so welcome. They're both students from Thales Academy Apex. The topic that the students are debating today is antitrust. And so let me just kick this off with, I guess, the most broadest question possible is for Professor Munger. Why should students care about antitrust? Why, and more broadly even than that, why did you say yes to us to come here and talk to our students and our young people about antitrust today?
Well, part of the reason I wanted to raise the question is that it seems to me that antitrust is a subsidiary part of the argument for why we should live in a society that encourages voluntary exchange and capitalism. And I worry that young people don't know enough about the answer to that question. And so public policy is being set in a place where almost no one knows the argument for markets, but they can imagine an alternative that would be better. That alternative usually doesn't actually exist. We need to be more modest, or what Thomas Sowell called the constrained vision of what we can accomplish. So in my talk, I tried to set up, there's actually a fairly limited set of things that the government can do, given that the state has incentive problems and information problems. So all of that is a way of setting up. Antitrust is an attempt to change the industrial structure that results from profit and loss. Over time, profits tend to reward companies that are producing things consumers want that increase social value. Losses say these companies should go away. But the social costs of that, including loss of jobs, workers that are upset, people who lose out on stock prices, all of those things seem like something that the state should try to help with. So I think the reason that antitrust is important is to recognize that there are some things that are bad, but they're still not so bad that the state can't make them worse.
Well, I thought the framework that you used just now in your morning talk was really helpful. It sort of lets us look at this in a helpful way. Our two students have questions. Who'd like to go first? Addie?
I can go first. I have one question, and it would be, would you say that the idea of the consumer welfare standard is more of a useless check the government uses to kind of comfort the public and justify their use of patents and antitrust law exemptions?
I worry that the end of my answer was things are not yet so bad that new policies couldn't make them worse. The advantage of consumer welfare, the consumer welfare standard, is that it's predictable and that it eliminates a lot of concerns for, well, we have to protect jobs or we have to worry about ensuring that there's a bunch of different choices just for the sake of choice itself. So I think that the consumer welfare standard, when I was working at the U.S. Federal Trade Commission in the 1980s, the advantage of the consumer welfare standard was it asked the question, will prices rise if we have this merger? And if the answer is no, then you ask, will quality fall? And if the answer is no, then that means that you can go ahead with the merger. The advantage of it is that it limits what the state can do to something that's predictable. Is it perfect? No. But I think it would be even worse to have political discretion, whether you believe it'll be by Nancy Pelosi or Mitch McConnell, having political discretion that favors one side or the other, I think would be even worse than an admittedly flawed consumer welfare standard, because it limits the discretion that the state has.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Jane?
For the sake of the debate, is it inherently good for large big tech companies to be broken up? Is it inherently good for consumers if big tech companies are broken up?
The question that economists always ask is, how was the large size acquired? If it was acquired by mergers, like this, the Standard Oil story was, there were a bunch of oil companies, and they either merged or they undertook a cooperative arrangement where they raised price and restricted output. If size is achieved by anti-competitive means, then they should be broken up. The large tech companies aren't large because they engaged in any competitive behavior. I published a paper recently called Giants Among Us. And I said that there's a tendency among online platforms to become giants because it helps to have just one place where you can all go and look at cat videos or show other people cat videos. So the result is the size of Facebook makes sense given the industry that Facebook is in. What we don't want is for Facebook to leverage that power to acquire other companies, TikTok, or to use it for political reasons. So I'm trying to sort of thread the needle on your question. The size of Facebook is a problem, but it should not be broken up. That doesn't make any sense. I have to switch back and forth to see your cat videos or my cat videos. There should be one place where we can see them. But what we can't do is allow Facebook to leverage that power either for political purposes or to be able to buy other companies that it can then link, because there's no inherent justification to have Facebook and TikTok be the same company.
Excellent. Well, thanks for those explanations. Let's close this out with kind of a fun one. On Twitter, your screen name is Mungowitz, which I believe is a fun story in itself. But I actually want to ask you about the other part of your moniker. So on Twitter, you call yourself Michael Fighting Nutzenschmerz, maybe is the right pronunciation. Everywhere, Munger. What is that, and why are you fighting it? Is there a relation to antitrust in any way in that, or is that just is that a separate?
I am so glad you asked. So there's a German word, Schadenfreude, which means that you take joy in the misfortune of others who deserved it. So if someone cuts you off in traffic and then gets a flat tire and have to pull off, you think, yes. So, and in fact, it is bad to feel joy at the misfortune of others, but it's common enough that there's a German word for it. Well, Nutzen is the use or acquiring of something, and Schmerz is sorrow. So Nutzenschmerz is sort of the opposite of Schadenfreude. Nutzenschmerz is the idea that you have something that I don't, and it makes me so mad that I'm going to use the government to make sure you don't get it. It doesn't help me because I don't get anything. I just make sure that you don't have it. Now, normally we call that the sin of envy, but we have dressed it up in a new name and we call it a concern for social justice. And so I worry that antitrust policy more and more is motivated by Nutzenschmerz, where people see that there's a large successful company and say, well, we should break them up because other people are benefiting from this. In fact, the consumer welfare standard, and we talked to Eddie about this, the consumer welfare standard might be misused, but the fact is it's creating benefits from someone. The distribution of that may not be equal, but it doesn't hurt you if someone else benefits. That's the claim behind fighting Nutzenschmerz. Let's try to have a really diverse, complicated system where everyone benefits from something. I may not benefit from everything, but there are things that I can benefit and things that you can benefit from, and all of us get a chance to try to organize that for our own prosperity and welfare.
Great, excellent. Well, thank you very much, and that sounds like a worthy endeavor to fight that. Excellent. Well, thank you to Addie, to Jaden, and Professor Munger. And thank you all in the Coolidge Foundation family.